look, we love us some Australia stuff around here, and New Zealand, we love y'all as well. But how do the two of y'all compare?
Yeah, it's a great question that I've never asked until this moment.
Yeah, it's like comparing the U.S. and Canada, or the U.K. and Ireland. Like, it's like, just because they're neighbors doesn't mean they're the same.
Yeah. I'm here for it. Here for it. I would love to see this.
Let's see.
Let's go in. Let's learn.
3, 2, 1.
Australia and New Zealand, two countries in Oceania, more specifically Australasia. Separated by the Tasman Sea, they're two well-developed countries that often rank really high on nearly every quality of life ranking list. And yeah, they're just pretty awesome. Both seem to be kind of far away from the entire rest of the world. And because of that, also since they're so both unique, kind of in their own little world. Let's first look at some differences between the two. First of all, New Zealand doesn't exist. Okay, that's just basically a meme at this point that started since so many world maps were leaving out New Zealand. In fact, there's even a large subreddit dedicated to them. But don't believe the hype. New Zealand, in fact, does exist.
Really?
I love that. Yeah, they've excluded New Zealand on like so many world maps.
Oh man,
it's nuts. Like, yeah, we don't exist. Like, what? Isn't there something supposed to be something next to Australia? Like, Madagascar. Got that. Like, what? Like, we already got that one. Like, okay, no, that must have been what I was thinking about. I feel so bad if your whole country gets off, doesn't make the cut, for the list of the globe. That's terrible. Anyway, I feel bad, but I don't. It's good. It's good.
It makes me wonder, if New Zealand doesn't exist, where does that New Zealand family channel, where are they based out of?
Just YouTube.
Just YouTube.
They're just in YouTube.
They're AI generated.
They're AI generated. Oh no.
They're good people.
Oh yeah, they are 100%.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, we had to.
Yeah.
See? There it is. Australia exists too, but it's about 29 times bigger than New Zealand. It's the 6th largest country in the world, baby. That said, it only has around 5 times as many people. Why? Well, check this map out. The population of Australia lives in the yellow area. And why does only 2% of the population of Australia live in that yellow area? That's because much of it is desert or near desert. 35% of the Australian continent doesn't get enough rain. But what about up here? Well, if you live here mostly because it's so the rest of the population of Australia, only one metropolitan area in New Zealand has a population over 1 million people. That'd be the magnificent Auckland. Australia, meanwhile, has 5 metro areas with over 1 million people. Its 2 biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, each have more people than the entire country of New Zealand. Being so much bigger, Australia has a wider range of different types of climates. New Zealand has mostly an oceanic climate, whereas Australia, just look at this map here. As I said earlier, much of it is desert or semi-arid.
But there's still animals everywhere. There's still bugs and stuff that'll kill ya.
Bro, yeah, not even animals. Like, Australia's like the upside down. Like, all the animals. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's at least 1 or 2 of them in New Zealand as well. I'm not saying that there isn't.
But my God, platypuses. You made platypuses poisonous? Why? That was unnecessary. Not just the animal, but the fact that they're poisonous is icing on the cake.
Yeah.
I should probably now bring up the sparsely populated area famously known as the Outback. While the Outback is typically only associated with the dry parts of Australia, it also includes the northern areas of the country that have a savanna climate. Basically, the huge area in Australia where humans don't dare live. It's a magical place. And believe it or not, Australia has a little bit of rainforest and parts of a monsoon climate up here, along the eastern coast, southeastern coast, and island state of Tasmania, where most of the population lives, by the way. Australia has a mostly oceanic and humid subtropical climate, but don't forget the lovely Mediterranean climate along parts of the southern and southwestern coasts. That's also where a lot of Australians live. Australia also has a more varied landscape, and this magnificent sandstone formation, Uluru, one of the most important indigenous sites in the country. New Zealand's mountains are way more impressive and tower over Australia's mountains. In fact, many people not from Australia forget that Australia actually has mountains. Meanwhile, everyone seems to know about New Zealand's dramatic mountains, mainly due to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films. The producer of those.
Oh, that makes sense now.
That's why everyone knows New Zealand, because everyone's seen it. How? Lord of the Rings.
Wow. So that's where you're going on an adventure.
Yeah.
Got it.
Dramatic mountains, mainly due to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films. The producer of those films, Peter Jackson, is from New Zealand, and he almost single-handedly put New Zealand on the map due to those films. Remember how I said it's often not on maps? Sorry for the bad joke there.
Good one. Moving on.
Anyway, you can visit the actual Shire from the film today. And fun fact, my uncles lived in New Zealand while they worked on the Lord of the Rings films. What was I talking about again? Oh yes, mountains! New Zealand's highest peak is around 1,500 meters taller than Australia's highest peak. Well, mainland Australia at least. No one seems to care about you, Mawson Peak, way over on Australia's Heard Island. New Zealand sits on the infamous Ring of Fire, an area where lots of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions tend to occur. Australia doesn't have to worry about volcanoes. Also, since Australia sits on top of a very stable tectonic plate with no active faults, residents there don't have to worry much about large earthquakes. New Zealanders, on the other hand, have to worry about a major earthquake at least once every 10 years. Related to this, both Australia and New Zealand occasionally have to worry about tsunamis. Australia gets hit more by cyclones. While both countries have to worry about floods and wildfires, Australia is more often in the news for them. Also, while bushfires are a regular thing in Australia, it had one of the worst bushfire seasons in recorded history from September 2019 to March 2020. It was catastrophic and a bit horrifying, to say the least. New Zealand is made up of islands. Australia is mostly made up of a continent.
Well, actually, some people actually call Australia a really big island.
Well, that's preposterous. What a silly notion. Australia is clearly a continent.
Hold on. I gotta pull this one out for our fans of Fat Electrician. Buh! Well, it's actually a big old island. Buh!
It looks to me like it's surrounded by water. Therefore, my simple brain, island.
Sorry, I had to pull that one out for Nick, Fat Electrician.
Yep.
I mean, I agree with you, but that doesn't stop the millions of people out there from calling it an island.
Well, someone needs to stop them. Liam, you must stop them.
Well, I don't know if that's possible, Mr. Beat. However, I can make a video looking at why some people think Australia is an island.
Right on. Can you have it done by the time I'm done with this video?
I'll see what I can do.
Dang, that's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. So anyway, like I said, Australia is also mainly a continent, the oldest, flattest, and driest continually inhabited continent with the worst soil for farming. And yes, New Zealand is made up of islands, around 600 of them, and they're mostly remnants of a bigger landmass under the sea.
Under the sea, under the sea.
called Zealandia. Of those 600, however, only 13 are inhabited by humans. Most of the population of New Zealand lives on the Big Two, the two larger main islands, the North Island, or Te Maui, and South Island, or Te Waipounamu. Oh yeah? Well, Australia actually has 8,222 islands, so it's so much more than just a measly continent. Many seem to forget that New Zealand is lower in latitude. I mean, higher in latitude. Gosh, that's confusing. It's higher in latitude than most of Australia. Further south, okay? Latitude-wise, Australia is more African than European, by the way. Australia borders the Indian Ocean. New Zealand borders the Pacific Ocean. East of New Zealand is just, wow, quite a bit of ocean there. And quite a bit of ocean west of Australia, too. Australians are often called Aussies, and New Zealanders are often called Kiwis. That name comes from the kiwi, a flightless bird native to the country that's also a national symbol. Here is a kiwi holding a kiwi. New Zealand is growing at a faster rate. Maybe why?
You know, when we did Geography Now New Zealand like a couple years back, I asked, is it possible to have a pet kiwi? And is that a good idea? And I can't remember what the answer was, but I'd love to have one. What about you?
And are kiwi fruit only in New Zealand? Because I feel like that would be great to know as well.
Yeah.
Like, are they indigenous to New Zealand? Like kiwis? Like, do kiwis eat kiwis? Or do kiwis eat kiwis that eat kiwis? Bro. Okay. Yeah.
Holding a kiwi. New Zealand is growing at a faster rate. Maybe why is because the cost of living is lower in New Zealand. Not only that, but residents there generally pay lower taxes than residents in Australia. Australia has a higher GDP per capita. That said, wealth inequality is a bit worse there. Also, New Zealand spends a higher percentage of its total GDP on education. Major industries in Australia include mining, energy, manufacturing, and financial services. Major industries in New Zealand include agriculture, forestry, tourism, and food processing. New Zealand generally has faster internet speeds. While sheep outnumber humans in Australia 3-1, sheep outnumber humans in New Zealand 6-1. Residents of Australia are generally more religious. The biggest religion there is Christianity. Within that group, most are Protestant. Almost half of New Zealanders have no religion. There's no big highway that goes straight through Australia east to west. I mean, there's the Outback Highway, a series of roads and dirt tracks that link the east and west, but I ain't trusting that, dude.
Yeah. When we checked out a video on road trains, like the conditions that they have to go through, I wouldn't do that. Fuck that.
That's crazy.
There's no big truck stops. Or, I mean, I don't know if there are big truck stops like there are in the United States, like, Buc-ee's or Quick Trip, things like that.
I mean, could you imagine working out there? Where's your job? Oh, it's in the middle. It's in the middle of what? Like fucking nothing. It's in
the Outback.
In the middle.
Dirt tracks that link the east and west, but I ain't trusting that, dude. There is a north-south highway that links Adelaide and Darwin, though. Stewart Highway, aka the track. It's just a 31-hour drive. There's a weird tradition in New Zealand of going places without shoes, apparently. I think they're onto something there. New Zealand legalized same-sex marriage more than 4 years before Australia. Australia has possibly the world's longest fence, meant to prevent the dingoes from killing sheep in the southeastern part of the country. In fact, it's even called the dingo fence. Due to its long geographic isolation,
I think that the U.S. should adopt that policy, not at the U.S.-Mexico border, we're already working on that, but on the U.S.-Canadian border to keep out geese.
Very true.
Radical terrorist Canadian geese.
Yep. Or affectionately known as Cobra Chicken. That's what they are. They're cobra chickens.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yes, let's build a land-based fence for the geese.
No. Sorry, a net. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I was like, I love that, man. That sounds like a big government idea right there. Like, now that's some shit I would vote for.
A fence to keep out geese.
The geese. Let's build a fence. It only's got to be. Look how tall geese are. They're only this big. They only need a fence this high. We can just fucking science.
Yes, and build a net to keep out the dingoes.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my god.
It's even called the dingo fence. Due to its long geographic isolation, most of Australia's mammals, amphibians, and reptiles are uniquely native to it. New Zealand has hardly any dangerous animals, or animals period, really. Australia, on the other hand, has the most animals with the most deadly venom. Sure, it's known for its cuddly koalas, wombats, and kangaroos, but many of its native animals will actively try to kill you, from sharks to jellyfish to snakes.
These animals are deadly.
That said, this may all be overhyped. In fact, due to anti-venom inventions, these two horrifying spiders native to Australia haven't killed anyone there since 1979. Australia has one of the highest electoral turnout rates in the world. Why? Well, probably because it's mandatory for citizens there to vote. Not in New Zealand, though. While medical marijuana is legal in both countries, parts of Australia have either decriminalized or straight up legalized it. Hey, speaking of, parts, New Zealand is divided into 16 regions. Australia has 6 states, 3 internal territories, and 7 external territories. So what's the difference between states and territories there? Well, states have more freedom to do their own thing. Territories are more under the direct control of the federal government. Hey, speaking of government, while both have a parliamentary system, representative democracies, and constitutional monarchies, Australia is a federation. And speaking of that, New Zealand once had the opportunity to become part of that federation. Yep, it could have been part of Australia, but turned it down. Oh hey, let's look at some history now, shall we? Humans have lived in Australia up to 64,000 years before they lived in New Zealand. 64,000 years. Aboriginal Australians, or a name given to the various groups of people who all first settled Australia, likely arrived by sea from Asia and developed a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Over a period of time of tens of thousands of years, the climate of Australia drastically changed. The earliest humans reached modern-day Tasmania around 30,000 years ago. Back then, it was connected to the continent via a land bridge. The first Torres Strait Islanders arrived from what is now Papua New Guinea around 2,500 years ago. New Zealand, meanwhile, was one of the last places settled by humans on Earth. It wasn't until 1,000 years ago, or maybe as recent as 750 years ago, that the Maori first arrived on canoes. The Dutch were the first Europeans to come across both places. In 1606, the Dutch explorer Willem Janszoon first landed in Australia. 36 years later, the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman spotted New Zealand, but never settled there. The same year that Janszoon had landed in Australia, the Spanish explorer Luis Vaz de Torres checked out the Torres Strait and its associated islands, which is why they're all named after him. However, it was the Dutch who came back in greater numbers to check out Australia, which they called New Holland, of course. Not many stuck around to live, though. Around 720-ish, some Makassar people from modern-day Indonesia came down to settle Australia. And then there was that James Cook dude, an extremely influential British explorer and cartographer. He first checked out, mapped out, and claimed New Zealand for Britain in 1769, and then checked out, mapped out, and claimed the eastern coast of Australia for Britain the next first year. The French came to both places soon after that, looking at possible colonization, but they became a bit preoccupied and never followed through. The British, however, did. In 1788, they arrived to settle, establishing the
Oh, so basically, the reason that Australia isn't speaking French right now at all is because of Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette.
The more you know, guys.
Mm-hmm. Good thing she said let them eat cake.
Yep.
That way our Aussie friends aren't all speaking French right now.
Yep. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's crazy.
I may have my timelines completely wrong here. I'm just letting you know.
But that would be crazy.
I'm just talking shit right now.
That'd be an insane. That would be an insane switch. That'd be an insane reality to live in if that happened.
Yeah. That's something that does fascinate me sometimes, is like alternate histories, like what if scenarios.
Man,
so,
yeah.
I don't know.
did. In 1788, they arrived to settle, establishing the colony of New South Wales, specifically at Sydney Cove on January 26th, which today is Australia's National Day, Australia Day. Many of the first settlers of Sydney were British convicts, criminals, mostly for petty crimes, but you know. Over the next 100 years, the British would establish several other colonies across the entire continent, similar to when the British established colonies in North America. At first, they tried to live somewhat harmoniously with the various indigenous people of Australia, who, you know, had already been there for tens of thousands of years. However, similar to North America, the indigenous population had little resistance to several introduced diseases the British brought over. Smallpox, measles, influenza, typhoid, and tuberculosis possibly shrunk the Aboriginal population up to 70%. And then, of course, future British settlers weren't as kind to the natives, and they took land that many indigenous folks claimed was supposed to be communal. This led to much conflict, especially in the early 1800s. Meanwhile, things were a bit more chill.
Those darn Europeans, particularly the British.
What's with the diseases, guys?
Yeah,
just
come
cover
on,
your
Britain.
mouths when you cough.
Yeah, come on, Britain. What are you doing? Look, we've covered you
That's
for
crazy.
3.5 years. Like, we know you inside and out. Almost. More
Yeah.
than most Americans do. What's your problem?
Yeah,
You did it to us here in America. Like, why did...
I love that though. I mean, I don't love that, but it's just like the you can't overstate. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but the diseases,
Yeah,
like,
it's those damn
rips
diseases.
through humans, like,
Yeah.
crazy.
I guess there's no way to ship your quality ales over there as well, because alcohol kills germs. That's science.
Yeah, science, 100%.
Oh well. Just gonna have to deal with it now.
Especially in the early 1800s. Meanwhile, things were a bit more chill in New Zealand. The first British settlers there were mostly Christian missionaries, and they lived at Rangiahua Bay beginning in 1815. More folks from Britain founded Kirikiri in 1822 and Bluff in 1823. The Maori and British mostly got along, at least until the New Zealand Wars broke out. What a surprise! Treaties had been broken, and the Maori got upset. Even though the Maori were greatly outnumbered and had inferior weapon technology, they put up a good fight for decades, but ultimately lost most of their land and livelihood. Most of the new settlers in both places did the whole farming thing, but land in Australia wasn't as fertile as many were hoping it would be. However, mining also became a thing. Gold rushes caused the Australian population to more than double between 1851 and 1860. New Zealand also has some gold rushes in the 1860s. Meanwhile, Australia and New Zealand, being literally on the other side of the world from Britain, had been becoming more and more independent. The British Parliament did allow a form of self-government to the Australian colonies and the colony of New Zealand. By the 1880s, though, a huge nationalist movement had developed in Australia. Surprisingly, a huge feminist movement had developed in New Zealand, also by by that time. In 1893, New Zealand became the first country in the world to give women the right to vote. But hey, 9 years later, Australia became the second country in the world to finally let women vote. Oh, and that was the year after Australia became an independent country. Like I said earlier, Australia said New Zealand could join up, but New Zealand was like, nah man, we're cool. Australia was like, suit yourself, and carried on. Instead, New Zealand earned Dominion status in 1907, which was similar to Australia, so it has pretty much been an independent country ever since as well. Only in the 1900s did the population of both countries really start to grow.
Okay, before we get into that, so basically what they're saying is 1902 and 1907 were Australia and New Zealand's respective 1776s for us, and I guess like 1903 and the other year was their 1920 for us.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating to me to see how a lot of these things are parallel to one another and happened like very close to one another in the timeline as well.
Yeah, it's not like 300 years later they got on board.
Right,
you know?
right.
It's or 300 years later we got on board. You know what I mean? It's things change in clusters. All across the globe.
100%.
That's it's kind of cool, man. To see like that.
Oh yeah.
To Australia, so it has pretty much been an independent country ever since as well. Only in the 1900s did the population of both countries really start to grow. And grow they did, although both today are still sparsely populated. Alright then, for the rest of the video, let's look at the similarities between the two countries. Due to the aforementioned legacy of the British, the majority of residents of both countries speak English. Maori and New Zealand Sign Language are also official languages in New Zealand. Residents of both countries have different accents, although for outsiders that may be hard to pick up. One way to tell is how they say their vowels. Aussies tend to draw out vowels compared to Kiwis. According to the World Happiness Index, residents of both are generally among the happiest in the world. Probably related to this, both have very low poverty. Both have a higher percentage of residents born in another country. And if you are interested in moving to either, because you want to be happy too, know that both are two of the easiest countries to immigrate to in the world. Because of this high immigration, both are ethnically diverse. While the majority
falling down a lot of passport bro rabbit holes after my split, New Zealand was another country that came up a lot in terms of remote work and being easy to immigrate to. So nothing to do with this video. I just want to point that out.
That's cool. Like how open they are to immigration. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have the land. They have the space.
Which one, New Zealand or Australia?
Well, I guess technically both, since no one really lives in New Zealand.
Right. They're both pretty sparsely populated as of right now.
Yeah.
But then once everyone gets hip to the idea that the West is crumbling, then that probably change.
Yep.
Immigration, both are ethnically diverse. While the majority of residents trace their background to Europe, more than 16% of Australians and 12% of New Zealanders trace their ancestry to Asia. New Zealand also still has a large Maori population. Maori culture remains a big part of New Zealand culture today. Both have a similar median household income. The minimum age to drink alcohol in both is 18. Both have areas with weird time zones. Both have...
Hold on. I need to run that back.
Both is 18. Both have areas with
weird time zones. Okay, so it's 12 and 12.75, and then 10 and 11. Oh man, it makes it so hard to figure out when to post this for our New Zealand and Australian friends.
So that means New Zealand is 17 hours. We're -5, right?
Yeah, I think we're -5.
And they're plus 12.
Yeah. So there's 17 hours ahead of us in New Zealand, or that one little part is 17 and 3/4 hours ahead of us.
That's nuts.
Damn.
weird time zones. Both have flags that are often confused since they're so similar, since they both feature the British Union Jack in the top left corner, and stars. An easy way to know the difference is that New Zealand stars are red with anger from constantly getting mixed up with Australia's. The ozone layer is thinner above both countries compared to most of the rest of the world. As I said earlier, both are two of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. Australia in particular. Sure, it may account for just over 5% of the world's land area, but it has just 0.3% of global population. A big reason why is urbanization. Hey, speaking of which, both are two of the most urbanized countries in the world. Odds are, if you live in either country, you live in a city. Both have versions of universal health care. Related to this, both have a really high life expectancy. The median age in both is about the same regarding violent crime. Both are two of the safest countries in the world. Both have historically had to deal with lots of invasive species or non-native types of organisms introduced to an area that become way overpopulated and hurt the local environment. As I said earlier, many people who live in both have recent ancestors from other parts of the world, and those ancestors brought lots of animals with them that had no natural predators. In other words, no one eats them. Because of this, in Australia, they've had to deal with an overpopulation of European rabbits, deer, cane toads, and honeybees, as well as wild herds of cats, goats, and horses. And believe it or not, Australia is the only country in the world with wild herds of camels. Oh, and there was that mice plague last year. Goodness gracious. New Zealand also has its fair share of invasive species. Many of the same ones as Australia, but other standouts like rats, possums, and weasels, but it has been a bit more aggressive getting rid of them in recent years. Residents of both often call the undeveloped areas of their countries, quote, the bush. Rugby is ridiculously popular in both, and of course there's all the sports rivalries between the two, the biggest probably revolving around rugby and rugby league, of course, but...
And by the way, y'all keep your notifications on from when we do our sports watch-alongs to a lot of rugby, and if enough people want it, cricket. But we're going to focus mainly on rugby.
Yeah, rugby.
Since that's what we've checked out more of on these two channels.
Yep.
Yeah.
But also cricket and netball, all these weird sports down under. Oh, down under is what folks call these two countries, since they're, quote, down under most other countries, meaning they're pretty far south, man. Coincidentally, the song Down Under by Men at Work is also the national anthem of Australia. Just kidding. But shout out to Australian music. No offense, New Zealand, but in my humble opinion, Australia's music is defo way better. Don't believe me? Name one New Zealand band off the top of your head. Exactly. Nope, Lord's not a band. Also,
Okay, come on. Lord's awesome, but also Keith Urban was born in New Zealand and was raised in Australia. So the Kiwis can claim Keith Urban.
Okay.
But AC/DC, how do you argue with that one?
Can't. Possible.
Exactly.
Impossible.
New Zealand band off the top of your head. Exactly. Nope, Lord's not a band. Also, there's this Australian band called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard that...
Oh my god! We just checked them out for Music Monday. Oh man, so that might have gone viral. So some of y'all might have come over to watch it from that video to come over here.
Oh
so
my
if you
God.
did, thank you for that.
That's
King
crazy.
Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Oh my goodness.
Literally in a video on Australian culture. Damn.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Not a band. Also, there's this Australian band called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard that wrote a song about me, so that's pretty rad and stuff. And one final thing. In 2006, an Australian tried to sell New Zealand on eBay, and he was unsuccessful. In conclusion,
Bruh.
I love that.
Somebody better
I love
talk
that,
about
dude.
that in the comments. An Aussie tried to sell New Zealand on eBay.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's just fucking... I hate you. I hate you so much. I'm going to sell your country on eBay. What? All right, man.
It'd be
All
like
right.
if one of us tried to sell Canada on eBay. How much
Yeah,
you
right.
think we can get for it?
I would have to call them first. It's
Yeah.
very easy to call Canada.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't answer our call.
It was after office hours. So Canada was shut down. Canada has hours of operation, by the way.
Yeah.
While there is indeed a bit of a rivalry overall today between Australia and New Zealand, I think they will always have this special bond. Due to being on the edge of the globe, far away from most of it all, they really are two special, amazing countries. Oh, before I go, I almost forgot. Liam,
Yes, Mr. Beat?
did you happen to get done with your video?
Why, yes, I did, and I'm happy to report that Australia is an island continent.
Well, it's settled then.
Well then, that was a good crash course on the differences of New Zealand and Australia. That's
There you go.
two countries that I consider them in the same brethren as all the other English-speaking countries in the world.
For sure, man.
And for those, I'm talking Australia, New Zealand, U.S., Canada, UK, Ireland, like that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
I feel like I've always just had this. You know what it was? Let me just be 100% honest with everyone. My introduction to Australia was Rescuers Down Under. That cartoon anyway. I don't know if they've seen it, but yeah. And
Yeah,
also
I
Crocodile
definitely-
Dundee.
Yeah, Crocodile Dundee. Mine was Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter, and AC/DC and Keith Urban. Those are my introductions to all of that.
So I can't wait to go at some point to one of them.
Yeah, that's bumped up in priority now from just checking all this stuff out.
Yep.
Especially if y'all drink and have good beer and wine and coffee down there.
Oh, for sure. Oh, that's that easy sell.
Oh yeah. Anyway, y'all, thank you for watching. What do they miss? Put it down in the comments below and consider watching the playlist that we have at the end of this video of some other Australian and New Zealand videos.
Yes.
And let us know what you think about them.
For sure, guys. For
And
sure.
What now, Dan?
Unplug and do something legendary, guys.
And we'll see y'all next time.
Later.